starting. It's right on time now. So I will take this opportunity to welcome everyone. Of course, we're very much grateful for the opportunity to have this session with all of you. So this is just a brief about the Global Economic Ideas Festival, which is the annual global conference of the ICCE, which is the Institute of Certified Chartered Economists. So briefly, the ICC is a global professional body that is providing certification in economics. So we operate just like other professional bodies that are vibrant in other disciplines like in accounting and finance and marketing. So ours is in economics. So typically, an individual who has shown interest in economics, of course, after earning your academic degrees and all of that, or even so, if you're not even in the academic field of economics, you can still decide to take a qualification in economics with the ICCE. So you will be taking through a series of examinations, which is covering our curriculum as you structure the global curriculum for that matter. And then afterwards,
I didn't catch the last thing you said, Paul. So it was a big gabble. It was coming through a big, yeah.
Okay, is it better?
Better, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I'm saying that, so what happens is the individual will go through a series of examinations, which is covering our curriculum that we've structured. So afterwards, then you'll be awarded a certificate as a chartered economist. So that's what the ICC, primarily we do. And of course, alongside it, we try to create platforms that will engineer conversations for global growth. So that is why we've created the first, our first, major global program called the GEIF, which is going to be an annual, forum that we're putting together. The main focus is on emerging markets, but then of course we bring in speakers from all over the world to, broaden the conversation to delve deeper into emerging markets specifically. So that's what the GEIF is. And so we're very fortunate that for these 2 days, that was yesterday and today, we've kickstarted our first edition of the GEIF. Originally, it was planned to be a physical meeting, but due to circumstances beyond our control, we had to move it to virtual. And of course, it's been so far hugely successful. And we are very happy that we'll be zooming into our second session for day 2, which we're very privileged to have all of you join us. Of course, it's been a series of engagements, emails, and finally, we are here to delve deeper into the conversation. So at this point, we'll be going straight to our session, which is on technology and growth and how we can leverage on inclusive tech to create a better world. And to help us, moderate the session is Professor Vijay, who is a fintech professor at University of Twente and of course, University of Hyderabad in India. So Prof. Vijay, please, you might have to take over and of course, help us to know who we are having a session with, and then we can zoom into it. So thank you very much for this opportunity. Yeah.
Thank you. And Vijay, before we go live, can you tell us a little bit how you plan to run the session? Just
yeah, so Vijay will take over now. So he will start by having a conversation with you, probably get your perspective on the topic first, and then he can go deeper into the specific question that he has. Yeah. And of course, we ask our audience who join us also send the questions as they have. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks for giving this opportunity to moderate the session on technology and growth, a topic that's of great interest for me. And then have the pleasure of having two highly empowered, beautiful ladies in the session, who can share their knowledge based on their vast experience. We have Sarah Pantoliano. She's the chief executive and senior part of the senior leadership team, ODI, and she has vast experience. She was previously managing director and director of humanitarian programs of ODI. And Sarah is a member of UN Secretary General Statistics Advisory Group, and she has many other hats that she wears. She works a lot on emerging markets. So I think we can gain a lot from Sarah's experience. Thanks for joining us, Sarah. Along with Sarah, we have a very accomplished person in the session. We have Hilda. Hilda is currently having her own enterprise. She's a CEO and founder of one second, Hilda. This information Hilda runs a fintech. She has extensive experience in fintech space, and currently Hilda is founder CEO of. I don't know whether I pronounce it right. She's a founder CEO of Tejesha. Is that the right way to pronounce?
Tejesha. Tejesha is there, yes.
Oh, thank you. And she was part of Obama Leaders 2019 in the program. Thanks for joining us, Hilda. So without any delay, I'd like to start the session. So the session is mainly about technology and growth, and how can we leverage on inclusive tech to make the world a better place. And as you know, technology is growing exponentially, especially after AI and ML innovations. So the digital economy is the US itself constitutes around 7% of the GDP, which is more than $1.5 trillion. So with all these things happening and all the growth spurring due to the innovations in technology, there are a lot of pros and cons of this. There are a lot of risks that we're taking. For example, unethical behavior and and a lot of issues connected with the frauds, cyber attacks, hacking, etc. So, it's and also a lot of inequality in terms of the distribution of technology. With all these challenges, at the same time with this exponential growth rates, how can we really make the world a better place? I think that's the topic we have. And with this, I would like to start with a few questions. Starting with Sarah. So, Sarah, I think my first question is connected with ethics. I think you have a lot of experience in that space. So how can ethical and inclusive tech help to create a better world, especially with the advances in AI and ML? So can you share some light on this?
Sure, thanks, Vijay. It's a pleasure to be part of this conversation. We're very, passionate about the power of tech, but you rightly ask about the ethics, surrounding it. So I think I'd, like to start by stressing how critical technology like AI, machine tech, are really offering huge potential, across every domain of human life. I mean, we do a lot of work on humanitarian assistance here at ODI, and we're seeing how digital technologies, are becoming integral to the delivery of timely, targeted, more cost-effective assistance. We've seen during COVID how biotech firms use the AI to mine, scientific literature to, better understand the virus and then, speed up the creation of the vaccine. We see applications of tech solutions in social care, to better support the elderly and the vulnerable. I mean, the list is endless. But as you rightly asked, there are challenges when we think about ethics and inclusivity. In my view, what constitutes ethical and inclusive, it's inherently a political choice. AI and tech are tools, but you only get out what you decide to put in. And what you decided to put in is inevitably colored by bias, by judgment, by normative expectations. So, back to talking about humanitarian response, AI can be revolutionary in terms of efficiency and speed, but this doesn't guarantee an inclusive, people-led assistance. In fact, it may even increase marginalization in some cases. Think about social media that has become an era defining innovation. All the research we've done actually shows how it can also really lead to new ways to perpetuate or contest gender norms and actually transmit and amplify false and hateful content. So to me, it's not always a question of what AI can do, but what AI should do. There are many tasks for which AI technology cannot be a replacement for human decision making and discretion. If you talk about social care, as I was doing earlier, technology can be a valuable tool, to assess a person's need, but it is really only social workers that can understand the complexities of a person's life, and that cannot be done by a machine. And all of these, to me, suggest that the design and the introduction of tech, especially for more vulnerable people, for those who are excluded globally, requires attention to the context, to the politics, to the power dynamics, that constrain how tech can be used and who can use it. I think it's only this way that we're going to manage, the ethical dilemmas that tech poses.
Thanks a lot, Sarah. I think it's a good point to say that it's all driven by the inputs. If the inputs are colored, I think the output is going to have ethical issues in any case. And it's, as you rightly pointed out, it's important to focus on all these elements. Now I'll move to Hilda with her leadership experience. So the question for you, Hilda, is, so in terms of the responsibility for leaders to face this exponential growth of technology, how can we leverage for making the world as a better society? You have ground level experience on this.
Yeah, so thank you. Yeah, so I mean, as Sarah said, tech has definitely brought in a lot of changes, especially in the current world where we have, we're past, of course, COVID pandemic, and now, the world is looking to settle in, post-COVID, and there's many other challenges in the current world. We're looking at the current economic recession, and we see the role that tech has continued to play, in solving, the inequalities that exist and the digital divide, but also to bring in inclusivity, especially in our world where I come from as Pesesha. We're talking about financial inclusion, and we're saying, how can we include the underserved and the excluded, which is really a big financial gap in the SME sector. We're talking of more than $300 billion financing gap, and majority of these that are excluded are women. And so we're starting to see, the power of technology, and that's where fintech comes in to really solve these inequalities, but also bring in equality as well at the same time. But again, it's not that straightforward. There is definitely a lot of other challenges and things to think about, especially when we're talking about, empathy and building a human-centric solutions that actually address relevant problems on the ground, and not just transactional based and looking at profits, but also doing good and solving these problems from a long-term point of view. But again, it takes, the aspect of leaders to come together and prioritize, that common good, and saying, how can we build technologies that actually address these problems collectively, but also in the end, make a very big difference that bring prosperity and cohesion. And I think that's the question we need to ask here, because in the end, technology is just going to be 5% of the solution. The 95% is going to still go back to the people who are actually building these solutions, the collaborations that are involved to solving this problem, and the risks that are associated with technology advancements. And this is going to take a lot of collaboration in the room to say, how do we solve and bring these values, transparency, explainability, accountability, all of them in the way we build and design solutions and the way we implement in the end. So again, there's a lot of benefit and financial inclusion that we've seen, but also there's also some harm and moral hazard that has come out of technology. So what I'm saying in the end, we're going to have to take a collaborative approach more than ever before.
Thank you. I think very insightful.
Can I add something to Hilda's comments?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so because I think it's, what Hilda said is very important about, this collaborative emphasis. But I want to broaden that from leaders also to political leaders. I think are a really critical aspect of, leadership when it comes to tech, because, I think they have a particular challenge of keeping up with the rate of change. Politics, and especially democratic politics, is by nature a slow process. It's a deliberative process of argument, debate, decision. I say that it's like an analog mechanism in a digital age. And this means that we're seeing a bit of a disconnect, between what political leaders are doing and, sort of leveraging the power of tech. But I think that political leaders in particular, have a responsibility to help channel, the change that tech can bring in a way that can improve, people's lives and prospects. But this requires attention to the process, to the decision-making process around tech. It means that this collaborative endeavor that Hilda was talking about, it means that really, the political leaders should make sure that there are, cross-sectoral discussions, communications, that we arrive at a sort of shared language between, policy and tech actors. There are considerations around the infrastructure, the hardware, the software, the network requirements, but also the dependencies around tech, so that everyone can really contribute to an open, democratic, online sphere, and sort of leverage the power of technology for economic growth. Because I think there is a real issue in terms of the digitally excluded not being part of this transformation that leaders really need to consider seriously, and that is really for the political leadership to create the right governance, legal and regulatory framework, the data protection issues, the privacy issues, all of that has to find not a solution, but the right guidance, with the political leadership, promoting the oversight, the public participation, actually putting human rights, front and center of what needs to be considered. Yeah, just wanted to add that.
Great, thank you, Sarah. I think very insightful takeaways. I think as you both rightly pointed out, collaboration, collective effort definitely leads to better outcomes. And the society, as Sarah pointed out, political leadership is always lagging. They're more, reactive than being proactive when it comes to technological advancements. It's important that they have to be much more apprised about what's happening in technological world and how that can have implications to the society. And also, I think, as Hilda pointed out, leaders have to prioritize this. I think, that's the major thing. Thanks, you both. And now, Sarah, I have to ask another question as we move forward. This is more about the work culture. How can we create an inclusive workforce with technology advancements, a diverse, inclusive workforce? So how can we have this environment? So what are the challenges with technological advancements? Is it going to make the workforce much more inclusive, diverse?
That's a very good question. I mean, digital platforms connect demand and supply, but can also create new forms of dependency and exclusion. It really depends on the access to the digital platforms. And in Africa, we're seeing a growing number, diverse number of platforms that, are really opening up vast new livelihoods opportunities, especially for young people. We see how gig matching, job matching platforms are offering young people flexibility, the lowering the barrier to entry to the job market, and in many ways are providing an alternative to informal employment. So, it's true that gig economies offer potentially unparalleled flexibility and choice, but they do bring with them very real risk of exploitation and abuse. And that's particularly for, groups that are traditionally excluded, or sidelined or marginalized, and especially for women and young people. So it is actually a big sort of critical issue, how we can make gig economies inclusive, and ensure that we harness the potential, but at the same time protect the rights of the people that work in them, by considering, the key issues of agency and choice over working conditions, over labor rights, of what constitutes decent work. Because we're seeing a massive phenomenon of the precarization of work, which really brings, huge challenges. So I strongly believe that technology can undoubtedly bring more efficiencies, in terms of lowering the transaction costs, improve market access, more personalized information for job seekers, but it doesn't often, or I would say easily, overcome the obstacles to employment that are actually very political and social in nature. Corruption, mistrust, social dynamics that may privilege one segment of the workforce over others. So it goes back to political leaders, because I think it's a task for governments to build and to sustain, a digital employment ecosystem where we have governance structures that can ensure that these livelihoods opportunities that are offered by technology are balanced in regard, to fairness, to equity, to decent work. And that means that, connectivity, infrastructure development, digital skills, the governance framework I was talking about will be fundamental if you really want, to foster this innovation, but manage risks at the same time. And the priority for me starts with, sort of recognizing that financial exclusion is a reality, particularly for vulnerable groups, that financial literacy and financial initiatives that are really youth sensitive, services that are, sort of youth sensitive are critically needed, to overcome these barriers, because we need to make sure that people have agency and choice when joining these platforms.
I think, rightly said. Hilda, you have anything to add to Sarah's points? Especially, you work with employees, and COVID has made us more digital in terms of labor platforms. Has it changed, in your opinion, the work culture?
Yeah, so I mean, absolutely. I think COVID has definitely not left anyone in terms of discrimination. Anyone can get COVID, but it has brought discrimination in other forms and shape, in terms of equality and in terms of making sure that the marginalized communities are included, especially, now more than ever because of connectivity. And so in our world of fintech and financial inclusion, we continue to see a lot of the communities that we were looking to serve, suffer because they didn't have connectivity, and now everyone needs to up their, their access. They need to be online for them not to be left behind. And so, are we going to first solve the problem of access to credit, or are we first going to solve the problems of infrastructure and connectivity? And so there's a lot of questions, that also the pandemic has brought on the table to say, these are the challenges even to driving that inclusivity, especially for these marginalized communities. Now, in the workspace, of course, there's been a lot of differences. I think, we've continued to see, remote working be at the center of even motivating employees, especially the technical engineers, that has become part of the motivation of attracting good talent. If you're not going to give them remote working, most probably, they will see that as, not an opportunity for, that flexibility not being there. It's not an opportunity for them to take forward. So we've actually already seen, change of mindsets, even in the talent that we recruit, especially at this stage. We've already seen, quite a lot of, that flexibility has also brought in a lot of perspectives and experiences in this new age, where we now have, more young people coming into the job market, and they're bringing in different diversity and creativity, and they're forced to think outside the box, which has also been spurred as a result of this, the remote working. Again, I think for me, one of the key things that I should emphasize is the diversity in the workspace. It's not just about, bringing in the power of technology, but is again also asking, how can it go further in even, bringing in, a culture that drives, sustainability in the way we design and implement solutions. So what I think is the biggest question, and what we've also seen as the need to continuously think about our organization culture in the way we do things, in the way we hire, in the way we define the job description, the training of the employees and training them about innovation and how to continue to be innovative in the way they do things. But of course, more importantly, also ensuring empathy in the way we build the culture. So it's still, a lot of, work and figuring out, but in the end, it's also going to be back to the organization culture and how it strengthens in the way we build and implement solutions with technology.
Mm-hmm. And how about people at the bottom end of the pyramid? So people who are unbanked, people who do not have access to technology, they become much more, the society has become much more divided in that sense.
Yeah, so I mean, of course, the people in the rural have been mostly affected. I mean, with this disruption of COVID and what's currently happening, because accessibility, is still a big problem. So the divide still exists. It hasn't been fully solved. And I think it's going to take a lot of time and collaboration, as we've said, to really solve this problem, both, from a political level to a private sector, public and private, and many stakeholders being involved. But then, we've as at Pesesha, what we've done is to bridge this gap. One, of course, we've worked with, local players and champions who are on the ground. So it's really important to bring that personalization of the world of these rural, marginalized communities and understand them, and not just providing the solution. So we've actually gone on the ground. We've talked to, rural leaders who are actually based there, and they've helped us to understand, okay, we have these challenges on the ground, but how can we still work towards the process of including these communities? And so we've basically building social networks. We've done a lot of financial education on the ground, really just to educate the women as well in terms of why it is important for them to start saving, how do they start saving, within their social communities, to be able to build their credit history. And so it has to start from somewhere. So the role of technology should not be to replace, but it should be to augment already existing processes. When we have seen that has been the approach that works, especially where we've gone to solving the bottom of the pyramid or the rural communities that we need to serve as far as financial inclusion goes.
True. In fact, I have noticed during the COVID time in India, in terms of tech equity, it was a huge challenge. The schools went online, but the schools that do not have any technology, especially in the rural areas, they had to school. They have to close the schools, and the students have to skip 1 or 2 years of education. On the other hand, students in the urban areas with the better standard of living, they had digital schools. And going forward in the labor market, there would be huge discrimination, coming up in the next few years. So I think, I don't know. So do you, both of you, Sarah and Hilda, what measures are essential in realizing this potential, if we have to make tech equity in the society?
Yeah, just before I answer your question on the point of schools, it was not just in India. Here in the UK, we've seen huge disparity, during COVID between the private schools that could go, seamlessly online as soon as the pandemic started, because, the kids that were in those schools had access to the technology, had a private, laptop that they could use, to follow lessons, whereas that was not the case for many comprehensive schools, and particularly, state comprehensive, and particularly in more deprived areas where, children did not have access to Wi-Fi, or did not, in very many cases have sort of the tools, the instruments, an iPad, the computer that they could use, or maybe there was one in the house that 5 people had to use at the same time for work or for learning. And so that really slowed the education attainment for a lot of young people that haven't really caught up with, and the measures that were put in place didn't really help them, definitely not commensurately. So it's a problem also in a G7 country, and a very acute problem that we need to bear in mind. But on your question of the measures, I mean, we're doing a lot of work on the digital platforms, and particularly data exchange in India with a number of partners, including with the IMF and the eGov Foundation in India, to try and understand sort of the how this potential can be harnessed. And I think what's become really apparent there is to really realize the potential of tech and manage risks. One thing that is fundamental is that governments need more digital skills in-house. because if you want to help shape the space, you need to understand the space, first of all. So you need, those competencies in-house, and there is a lot of ground to make up. The World Bank has recently sort of written about it, and to quote them, they stressed very clearly how most governments are still sitting on the sidelines. They have really antiquated recruitment practices that go, bygone salary scales, and the packages and the perks that the tech industry offers leaves governments with, the bank described it as the slim pickings from the talent pool, which then means that we don't have the right people in government to help shape the space and create, the right ecosystem to leverage the best of technology.
Yeah, that's a very valid point. So government measures are the most critical things to ensure tech equity. So one final question for you both again. So what are some of the notable opportunities and challenges that arise with this proliferation of new technologies?
You want to go first?
The new technologies emerge and then penetrate into societies. What opportunities and challenges would arise for making the world a better place?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go. I was just checking with Vijay who you wanted to go first.
Yeah, so I mean, we can, basically it's countless the opportunity that technology can do in really solving, the current challenges and the opportunities that it can bring on the table. I mean, more than ever before, we've seen mobile penetration rise, especially in Africa, and of course, as a result of the pandemic and many other issues that we're going through, there's been a lot of other very good things that have happened in the economies, and really driving the economies across the world, just bringing, opportunities, streamlining value chains, solving for productivity, bringing more efficiencies, giving small traders in our world, credit histories more than ever before. And so there's a lot that we can talk about and more to happen, because some of these new technologies, we're just starting to realize their value and the
Lost you.
I
I can carry on with this list if you want in the meantime, because I think, Silvia is saying the opportunities are enormous. I think digital technology can really be a tool, to achieve better economic and social outcomes. You can, as Silvia was saying, can improve efficiency, it can reduce costs, it can help expand service provision, it can help widen economic and financial participation. We talked about widening job opportunities, livelihoods. Actually, it can help also challenge, social and cultural norms that are, destructive or negative. And I think it fundamentally can help reshape, the terms around economic activities and try and really help, inclusion, or at least understand, how inclusion and exclusion are considered and understood. To me, the challenges are political and societal. It's not about the technologies, the politics and the social norms around it, the condition, the opportunities, and sort of pose the biggest challenge. There are 3 or 4 fundamental questions I think need to be asked. They're not easy questions, to really figure out how we can really leverage, this potential. The first is going back to the governments. How can governments and societies, I would say, find the political will and investment capacity, to really tackle the digital exclusion, making sure that the groups that are already in society, marginalized, excluded, are not left behind by the digital revolution. And second is, I was saying at the beginning, the governance, the regulatory structure and frameworks that are needed to make sure that technology is not exclusionary. And third is, how the businesses and the industries can adapt, to the pressures of the digital marketplace, to make sure that the economy really sort of thrives rather than being constrained and, sort of with jobs being replaced and sort of, again, creating more pressure for people rather than improving it, particularly where workforce and skills need to adapt, to replace jobs that technology has made obsolete. So these are not easy questions. I don't think there are easy answers, but they are the questions that it is critical to address, if you want to positively leverage the power of technology for inclusive growth.
Oh, yeah, and excellent points. Hilda, we lost you in the middle, and thanks to Sarah, she took over the discussion forward. Do you want to add something? Will you start?
No. I guess we have already seen that technology doesn't always work. I have connectivity issues where I am, so it doesn't always solve the problem. I think that's where I was, and really we need to figure out the good and the bad, because as I said earlier, this is going to be the people who are solving these problems using technology. Are they also thinking of both sides of the world and the impact that it creates sustainably? And so for me, it's just going to be 4 things on the table. One, really thinking about the human-centric aspect of technology and the design and the implementation and how we do things using technology so that it creates a long-term impact. 2, I think regulation is going to play a big role in really making sure that there is not only just transparency, but sanity into the way we use technology. I mean, we've seen blockchain coming up, and all these new technologies, but then, we are still in the early days of realizing, are they good, are they bad, and what harm can they cause? Because this is how we also define the success of these solutions, but also in the end, prosperity. So I think it's really important that, regulation becomes at the center of making sure that, yes, the experiments are happening, but we're also thinking about, intentionality and the human aspect into the way we roll out these new innovations. And then collaborations is going to be key. And Sarah has mentioned about political, of course, this is going to be, it has to be very inclusive. It can be, just government or private sector. There's going to be research. There's going to be, academia, and of course, the fintech players and any other party that plays a role in streamlining the success of these innovations to be sustainably, in terms of their growth, but also the impact that we want to see in the end that generates out of them. I think that's the way we are going to create the success of these new technologies. And of course, make sure that they lead to the prosperity for the people we are solving for.
Thank you very much. Thank you both, Sarah and Hilda. Excellent discussions and a lot of insights. So in the interest of time, we have to close the session here. And thanks for your time. And thanks for all the participants.
Not at all. A pleasure. Thank you very much for moderating, Vijay.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye for now.
Bye. Thanks, Paul.
All right. Thanks, Sarah. Okay.
No problem. Thank you. Bye.